I'm joined now by Eric LISANN, a former state and federal prosecutor who is currently in private practice. Thank you for joining us tonight. Now, first of all, your reaction to that sentence?
That's a long sentence. Rape is a serious crime, and in some types of rape, those types of sentences and even longer are handed down. But this was unusual in that it was really near the absolute maximum that under the law he could have received. That would have been 25 years. It's in fact what the prosecution urged on the court, and he got very close to that, 23 years, for something that would have been seen in isolation even just a few years ago as perhaps not meriting that long of a sentence because it would have fit into the category of what was seen as almost consensual. But here it's clearly this trial has moved the expectations and the norms over to a place where those prior expectations were no longer the case. In part, it's because also Weinstein himself is such a exemplary villain, and the court had all of that evidence before it, all of his prior bad acts. And it wasn't just the charges of conviction that were relevant to the sentence.
Right, yeah,
but at his age, 23 years, it's a very long time.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because in the end, it was just 6 women, wasn't it, who took Weinstein to court. To what extent did the judge take into account the dozens of other women who have come forward to accuse him of sexual assault and rape?
The judge had all of that information in front of him, as did the prosecution, and the judge also had the statements of the defense and everything the defense wanted to put into play to consider. All of that is relevant and allowed to be considered by the judge within certain parameters, but under New York state law, the judge at sentencing has a wide variety of discretion, and there's no question that in getting 23 years under these conditions, that played very heavily on the judge's mind. And certainly the optics of it, having all the women there at the sentencing, they came back for the sentencing after having testified at the trial. 6 is a lot by itself, but yet in this particular case, that's just a fraction of the total, a fraction of the iceberg. So with all of that, the judge having sat through all of the trial, there was a mountain of evidence to conclude here that Weinstein did not have too many redeeming qualities, and there wasn't too much to justify it. And certainly the judge knew in what he was doing that it could effectively be a death sentence in the sense that with a sentence of that long, somebody Weinstein's age, the odds are that he wouldn't survive it if he had to serve a great portion of the sentence, but the judge went ahead anyway, factoring all this into consideration. It's very significant.
And he failed really to show any remorse during the trial, or indeed today when he was given the chance to make a statement. He said that he felt sorry for the men accused in the Me Too movement. There was no mention at all of his victims, no kind of apology or anything like that. What did you make of that?
Well, that wasn't very smart. He had been aggressively defended previously to this throughout the proceedings. The judge noted also that he'd had a good defense, which he, like everybody accused of a crime, is entitled to, and the jury has to do their job and seriously consider everything before it. But this statement that you're referring to that he made was somewhat surprising, but it is the statement of the sentence, of the defendant himself. Not everything is choreographed. In fact, much less of it than one would think is. This is the current state of his mind right now. He didn't have to make that statement, so that might have been a mistake that he made, but it wasn't well articulated, and I doubt that it did him any good.
Do you think that this case will set a precedent in that it might encourage victims of rape and sexual assault to come forward, whereas before they might not have done?
Well, certainly it goes in that direction. As I said before, one distinguishing feature of this case is that you rarely have defendants with this kind of a history, this kind of a baggage. And at the end of the day, that's probably what drove this case forward. But even in the case of Mr. Weinstein, we can see that a few years ago, when this same office, this same prosecutorial office, was presented with a case against him that was not much different in the broad outlines than this one, they declined. Here, when faced with that exercise of their discretion again, they took the case, they pursued it very aggressively all the way to the end, and that certainly is a sign for things in the future that under these circumstances the environment has changed. And in fact, there's another case pending against Mr. Weinstein in Los Angeles that could go in the next year or so, involving two other very serious cases involving him. So this is not even the end of the story for him in particular.
Eric, thank you very much indeed. Eric LISANN there.